From CBS News Bay Area, this is the Afternoon Edition.
Right now in the Afternoon Edition, stopping widespread drug use. The new efforts to crack down on the San Francisco streets. Good afternoon, I'm Ryan Yamamoto. This is the city's latest effort to turn the tide against the fentanyl crisis. San Francisco Sheriff Paul Miyamoto unveiled a new plan to combat the crisis in the city. 130 deputies will be deployed to areas like the Tenderloin and the Civic Center, where open-air drug dealing and drug use runs rampant. The sheriff also announcing his plan today, along with other city leaders at City Hall.
Their objectives are very simple: to eradicate open-air drug use and assist those suffering from harmful behavior into programs and services, support current efforts to disrupt drug sales, increase public safety with a greater visible law enforcement presence.
The 6-month deployment goes into effect this month. In Oakland, Mayor Sheng Tao announced an amendment to her proposed city budget, and it was all possible thanks to a $27 million federal grant to maintain the city's fire department. That original budget plan cut $20 million from the Oakland Fire Department. The amendment will keep the city's 24 fire engines in full operation and allow the city to hire 35 new firefighters.
And by amending this budget to restore the vital services, the department can continue to respond not only to fires, but also emergency medical incidents throughout our communities.
And during the event, they also announced a new interim fire chief, Damon Covington. Last month, Chief Freeman, he announced his retirement. Now to that developing story that's on the East Coast but feels way too close to home. This thick blanket of wildfire smoke giving millions of people horrendous air quality is barely expected to budge. Thousands of flights have been grounded as a result of the thick haze, and plays and sporting events all along the East Coast have been postponed as well. Some in North Carolina are impacted by the Canadian wildfires as well. We're going to bring in First Alert meteorologist Darren Peck. And Darren, we've seen a lot of this smoke. This is New York right now. I mean, it's just a gray haze, and that's not fog outside.
And that's better than it was yesterday.
I know.
Things have improved
Wow.
from where it was. So it brings back so many memories for us. We know this is a risk
It's a little triggering.
It is triggering. And so I keep saying this is a local story. We're just as vulnerable at some point down the road to see another inundation of smoke. Maybe not this year, because we had such a wet winter. But I want to show you what might be the most important image that helps explain why this smoke inundation is as bad as it is. This is a map that's showing you something called the Evaporative Demand Drought Index. The only takeaway from this that's important is this image is showing you the atmosphere's ability over the previous week. Because it was so warm, we've been breaking heat records in Canada before these fires broke out. That's really what's behind this, the intensity of the heat waves Canada's been experiencing through May and early June. But it's not the heat alone. When you get temperatures that are that warm, a warmer climate has more room to hold water vapor in it, and it is pulling it from the landscape. It's drying out the forecast, it's drying out the forest and the landscape more than it used to. This is the #1 driving cause behind this new fire regime we all live in. And the smoke inundation that we're experiencing is the effect that we all experience personally. I want to share 2 tweets that were put out by researchers who focused on this yesterday. First one is from Neil LaRue. He's a researcher at the University of Reno. For years, water has been identified as the dominant delivery mechanism for climate impacts, floods, hurricanes, etc. But we now need to acknowledge that fire is the immediate realization of a warming climate. And it's going to have a global reach that is still yet to be understood. And of course, it's the smoke that we need to factor in on that. So here's the next tweet. This one comes from Dr. Krista Colden out of UC Merced. Wildfire and the resulting smoke may be the climate change exacerbated disaster that is most likely to negatively impact the most people in the United States. And by the way, it's also going to impact the people who are least prepared for it. We've seen this grow exponentially in the last 10 years. And what's happening right now in New York is a perfect example of what we should be preparing for. What can you do for this? Start thinking about ways to insulate yourself in your home the next time we have one of these. Make sure you've got your windows sealed if you can, and find a way to filter the air in your home. Get a good air filter, because it's inevitable. We're probably going to be back in that situation again. Maybe not this year, but certainly down the road. 69 degrees in San Jose right now. And if we take a look at the marine layer, that's quickly going to go away. And it'll be more sunshine than anything else today. And we're going to see daytime highs that are staying average. They're having heat waves in Canada. And on the flip side of the continent over here, we've been below average for a while. The two are connected. Our weather has been so serene and cool, we're not even thinking about it. Meanwhile, records are falling. across North America for heat so far over the spring, just not here. All right, and we'll have the 7-day forecast coming up to show you how those temperatures are pretty much going to hold steady. San Francisco and Oakland never change a whole lot, but we're going to look at the microclimates, and we'll see what this looks like for the inland valleys into the weekend. Ryan, back to you. 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 Ryan.
Flight of SFO, where a stressful journey for passengers on board an Air India flight is finally over after getting stuck in Russia. Overnight, more than 200 passengers and crew arrived at SFO for New Delhi. They shared some hugs and smiles with loved ones. Well, mechanical issues with an engine forced them to land in Siberia, and while airlines flew in a new plane, While the airline flew in a new plane, the passengers stayed in a hostel. And by the way, Air India is one of the few airlines that still travels over Russia since the war in Ukraine started. And sanctions made it hard for travelers to use credit cards while stuck in Russia. Many are just upset with the airline.
I think a lot of us said it was kind of like a nightmare, because first it was like kind of really scary when they had to, dump the fuel in the middle of the flight. But then we landed, it was nice, but then, the whole situation there was just really bad.
The airline says it will refund all the passengers and give them a travel voucher.